people in the Soy Tayed bubble, there's people that get in their bubble that only ever hang out with other expats, kind of don't embrace, interacting with, local friends and things like that. I was in the Middle East from 2010 to 2016. And I think, one of the big things for me, that if you just look at it as an expat and you just look at it on the surface level, you miss is Arab hospitality is unrivaled. You go into somebody's house and they welcome you with fruit, with tea. You happen to compliment them on their painting on the wall. You're sitting there having a cup of tea, and they'll rip the painting off the wall and try and roll it up and put it and give it to you. They're like, "Here, it's yours," and it's like, "No, I don't need your painting. I was just complimenting you."
Welcome to Fruiting Body Podcast with your host, Brendan. Today we have a legend of a guest. This time we're not joking. This is Ryan Gilbert. He's going to be telling you his extravagant travel journey. He's been to 72 plus countries. So let's figure out which ones those are. Now, Ryan is from America. He is a jack of all trades, but specifically, he was even working at the same company as a former guest, Phil Anthony. So there's some Fruiting Body Podcast connection there. Today, this podcast is for anyone out there. How can you have that ideal job and be able to travel the world and, couple that together and, live that dream life? I'm definitely fucking rambling again. So without further ado, let's just get this podcast started. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. We got Ryan Gilbert here. First, thank you so much, buddy, for coming on today. I know it's a bit last minute and you're supposed to do some catering.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah. Had an opportunity to go on a boat, and I thought this would be the better place to be. So happy to be here.
Let's jump into that. You've given up, with models on a yacht catered to come and sit in my lovely studio. What was that all about today? What was going on?
Yeah, so in the last year or so, me and a couple of friends have partnered up and put together a couple restaurants on Soy Tayed. So we partnered with one of our existing friends that had Kata Turk Chalong, and we've rebranded that to Flying Armbar, and we've opened up Lucha Cantina, which is an authentic Mexican grill and bar as well. So yeah, we ended up doing catering, and one of our good friends, he's chartered a boat, and he wanted us to cater with some authentic Turkish food.
Just Turkish, or you'll be doing both Mexican?
I think we're doing mainly the Turkish today. Yeah. So he's a Turkish guy, so we give him the authentic flavors of home,
People listening out there now, that's the first question they're going to ask. And they always wonder, they've come to Phuket. Now you're running multiple businesses. We see you traveling the world. You're doing your engineering stuff as well. What connects you to Phuket? I mean, what's always bringing you back here? Because I'm seeing on your Instagram, you're looking like a proper influencer, with maybe minus the followers. But hey, go check it out. It's I don't know if that's like a double shot there. No, but I actually was going through your account. It's like, fuck, this is really interesting. You're able to work and travel. Can you just tell that part of the story of how did this all come together and what really connects you to Phuket?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, all of us, our Instagrams are the highlight reels of, so it tells the happier parts of the stories. But I obviously grew up in America. I came from outside of Philadelphia, and I always wanted to grow up and be an architect and an engineer. So I was a little nerdy 12-year-old kid and was getting beat up and stuff in middle school. But I always kind of dreamed of getting out and seeing the world and kind of experiencing things. I was always a little bit nerdy watching the news, seeing how the whole world worked. So, I was a very mediocre student and managed to get into a Penn State satellite campus, which my university has 100,000 people. And 20,000 start out at the good university, and then the other 80 we start out at some halfway houses. So I managed to kind of turn my stuff around a little bit there, and got into engineering and architecture. Did this really nice program that left me with $200,000 in debt, but also allowed me to kind of catapult myself into living abroad. So I lived 2 years in New York after I graduated, but in those 2 years I was just itching to get abroad. And thankfully, I chose to work for an English company that had 25, 30 offices all over the world. So yeah, in 2010, I managed to transfer from our New York office to our Dubai office to go work on Louvre Abu Dhabi Art Museum, which subsequently went on hold pretty much right when I got to the Middle East.
Which year would have this been?
This was 2010.
Oh, sorry, 2010. Wow.
Yeah, so I'm old. 39 in 2 weeks.
Hey, I'm 38, so hey, we're okay.
Yeah.
I think I got more gray hair, but yeah, don't worry, I am 38 to the audience.
Nice.
So you're going out to the Middle East now. Just to like backtrack before we jump into that travel itch. I mean, I'm from Canada. You're from the U.S. Most of us, the extent of our travels are the Caribbean, maybe Mexico. Growing up, were you traveling the world? Did you get to see that to get that itch to want to travel?
I honestly, we had, my parents, we come from a reasonably modest background. We're solid middle class, but, my mom, she didn't graduate high school, didn't get her GED. My dad was a car salesman, and he worked in restaurants and catering, and my mom worked in catering and restaurants as well. So growing up, we didn't really go on that many holidays. We went and visited my grandparents in Florida, every once in a while. And we had one big trip when I was maybe 13, 14 to go to Vegas and the Grand Canyon and stuff. So that was really the only trips I took as a kid, was a big one to Vegas. I remember it was Easter, and my mom won some money at the slot machines and brought up like $100 worth of candy to share with us. So that was quite cool. But yeah, no, the first time I ever left the country, I was 19 in university. I went on a ski trip to Canada, and back then you could just go on a driver's license because that's how old I am. So I didn't get a passport until I was 21. I studied abroad in the UK. The second I had a chance to get away and explore, I took it.
Yeah, it's usually that study abroad where you start to meet other people that have those experiences that really turns it on. I studied abroad in Australia for a year, and after that, it just made me realize, like, because the people you meet there too, you meet a lot of international students that are living all over the world, and their stories, you realize quick, like, why would I live in my home country? There's so much opportunity out there. Did you kind of get that experience? That itch might have came from studying abroad?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was always budding inside me before then, and this isn't to knock America or anything like that. I always, I love my family, I love where I come from, and being, American passport holder, I've been blessed, but this is a huge planet, and we only have one life, and I always just had the urge to see and learn as much as I possibly could, and when I was in university, the kids from the English, it was Leeds University, they came over for a year and studied at Penn State, and then we would go and go over there. So I already had a friend base. I already had, a support network, and I had friends from my program coming with me. So, 6 or 7 of us, before the semester even started, we did, 6 or 8 weeks traveling around Spain, Italy, France, which, isn't that adventurous now that I'm 39 and all of that. But for, a 20-year-old kid, it was pretty wild back before you had cell phones and all of that. It was a nice first experience for, American dipping his toes in the travel.
And you look back at those travel, it's same with me at that time traveling. You really look back and think about it, like the Google Maps didn't work. Kind of, we had Lonely Planet, but it was much more raw. And I think this question more leads into today when you're traveling and going around, the difference between the access and, the access to information. Would you touch on like the differences between 2010 when you're traveling, or even prior to that, to today, and like how you kind of even go about your travels, like in terms of planning your next destination? What comes into consideration when deciding?
Yeah, I've always been a bit impromptu, and I'm not much of my job professionally for a very long time was project management and planning and strategy and all of this, but in my personal life, I'm more of a, hey, let's go do something. So back in the day, that was challenging, and it left me sleeping on, in random places, on a sidewalk, because I didn't plan properly and assumed that I could just jump into any hostel that was available.
Or couch surfing.
Yeah, exactly. So nowadays with, the Airbnbs, hostel world, all of that kind of stuff, it's a lot easier to do what I do without the planning. There was I got really good at charades for a very long time. I was very good at communicating in other languages without actually using any words other than grunts. And I think everybody, learns a little bit of that when you travel around, how to, even now with Google Translate in your pocket is a powerful tool, but at a certain point, going, bok, 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 will get your chicken just as easy. So it's a little bit more fun sometimes.
I think, and these countries now that they're more access to the information and they're all starting to replicate each other in terms of like the tourist destinations, definitely becoming overrun. Now, I want to jump into more on like the Middle East side. From my perspective, like I've never been to the Middle East, as in, I think like Dubai, Saudi, that whole area. It's probably last on my list. Now, what's the good side of that? Because I did see you traveling, and it looked like there's a lot of places that are off the beaten path of a tourist that I saw on your Instagram. I'm like, actually, like that kind of changes my whole perspective on. I maybe do want to go there. Can you talk about your experience living and traveling in the Middle East? What are the pros and cons, and what can people expect from it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to take your perceptions, and you say it's near the bottom of your list in terms of places to go. I think it really should be moving closer to the top. I think a lot of people have the misperception about the Middle East. You have people that have perceptions about Dubai being very Miami, LA, plastic and fake. And when you go as a tourist and you only go for a few days and you go to the shopping malls and you go to, the beach clubs and stuff, yeah, I mean, obviously you're reinforcing that. It's the same thing as if you go to New York and you only go to Times Square. So there's a lot of history in the Middle East. It's the birthplace of civilization, Mesopotamia, Iraq, these areas, there's so much history, mathematics, Ibn Battuta, one of the greatest world travelers ever, came out of the Middle East. I think the biggest thing for me is the hospitality in the Middle East. So I have a lot of Saudi friends. I moved, to the Middle East in 2010, and again, coming on Phil Anthony, him and my project, the Louvre, went on hold basically right when I moved to the Middle East, and I got sent to Saudi Arabia. So it felt like a little bit of a bait and switch. And coming from America, I was like, what am I getting myself into? 2 weeks in the UAE, and now I'm moving to Saudi. And honestly, Saudi was such a good experience. Me and Phil worked on a construction site with a bunch of other guys on this women's university that was being built, 55 buildings for a giant campus. And this was during, King Abdullah. He was really pushing to increase, higher education. He built, big cities and trying to get younger people jobs. But I think the big thing for me is if you look at Saudi Arabia from back when me and Phil were there in 2010, I just spent the last 4 years there. Now, the amount of change has just been absolutely incredible. His Highness Mohammed bin Salman has been, really pushing the cultural change. And I think that people's perceptions are still of, a repressive place where women aren't allowed to drive or this or that, and that's not the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is, Riyadh is becoming, similar to Dubai in terms of, culture and restaurants and things like that. But I think the history of Saudi Arabia and they're really pushing right now a tourism drive. There's absolutely beautiful scenery and history. The pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina that a lot of Muslims have done over the last 1,500 years. There's this trail that runs along the west coast there, and the project that I was working on for the last 4 years in Neom, in the northwest of Saudi Arabia, it's the most beautiful place. The sunrises are unparalleled. Every day you see the sunrise over the mountains and sunsets over the sea to Egypt, where Sharm el-Sheikh is. The Red Sea is the most beautiful scuba diving. I don't know if you're a diver.
Yeah, I dive.
Mate, it is the most incredible coral you'll ever see, and it's pristine. It's similar to Sharm el-Sheikh and Dahab and the Egyptian side, but a lot less disturbed. It's been a bit untouched. So, the Nabateans that have done Petra, they also have plenty of ruins throughout Saudi Arabia that I went to back in 2010. Nobody there. Now you have places like Al-Ula that have just the most incredible infrastructure that's being built. So it's amazing to see the transformation that's happened in Saudi and the overall Middle East. I've been to Yemen, Socotra, this island off the coast of Somalia. Again, people hear off the coast of Somalia. They hear Yemen. They think, of the Civil War. They think before that, when I went there was Al-Qaeda, Arabian Peninsula you had to worry about. But this island, Socotra, is the most beautiful island you'll ever see. It has its own flora and fauna that you don't see anywhere else in the world because it's so isolated. Yes, there was Somali pirates refueling on that island, quite recently when I was there. But at the end of the day, it's, an island the size of Manhattan with 20 or 30,000 residents. Most of them are kids, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And everywhere you go, people are really warm and welcoming.
But is it easy to travel? Like when you're in, let's say you're in Dubai or the UAE and you want to go to Yemen and go to these islands, are the travel routes, they're safe? There's no issues?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, if you go through certain areas, like so mainland Yemen right now, there's a little sketch. But there's flights from, Sharjah and Abu Dhabi and Cairo to this island. Same thing, I went to Kurdistan in Iraq. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful country. The most welcoming people you'll ever imagine. Fly Dubai goes directly there.
So you're kind of just bypassing those land routes anyways.
Yeah.
I guess similar to like Sri Lanka.
And there's some really good companies. So one of my really good friends in Dubai, I actually was just in Palestine with him. He's doing stand-up comedy now, which is an interesting story. But he has this travel company that he's had, and I've been friends with him 12, 13 years. And he arranges these epic trips all over. I've seen some amazing stuff with him. So he helps sort these kind of things out. So if you're feeling a little nervous about what you're getting into, there's providers. His company's called Escape Travels. And, I've been to Ethiopia with him, to the tribal regions of Ethiopia where people have like the lip piercings and people are walking around with AKs and stuff. And you're just like, this is interesting. Saw a man do a ceremony to become a man from a boy, literally running across the back of cows. So yeah, really blessed to make friends. That's one of the nice things about being in the Middle East. It's the center of the world, right? So you make friends with other people that are really interested in travel. And there's these, companies and that'll help nurture that love of travel. We were just in Palestine. And again, Palestine has a lot of perceptions. Israel, Palestine, there's been a lot of troubles there, and a lot of people in the news hearing about, terrorism or people, being oppressed and apartheid, going and being on the ground there. So my friend that has this travel company, he was part of this comedy tour, and there was a guy from Saturday Night Live there that, did 2 years in Saturday Night Live. He's absolutely hilarious. This guy,
which guy?
Dean Edwards.
Okay.
Yeah. He was like friends with Kevin Hart back in the day. So I'm sitting there on the bus with him. We bounced between 5 different cities in the West Bank in Palestine. And this guy, Ahmed, who was part of the Axis of Evil comedy tour, or he was a creator of Axis of Evil comedy tour. So he's an Egyptian-American comedian. And it was organized by this Palestinian-American comedian. So, people have these perceptions of the West Bank and the sadness, of kind of people being, relocated from their homes in 48 or removed from the country entirely and becoming refugees in their own country. But there's still people living their lives, right? So, you going to these places and going and seeing things, you come to this realization. I think a lot of people in my country, in the U.S., don't recognize it. There's a lot of people in power trying to make us all think that these are the others and pin people against each other, that your problems are because of this person, and really focusing on people's differences. But when you go and you travel and you see these other places, you see we're all kind of the same, and everybody really just wants to provide for their family, have joy, like see their kids grow up to be better than they are. And, going to Palestine and going and seeing a refugee camp where there's 33,000 people living in this camp designed for 3,000 people. And literally the day after, 80 people were injured, 2 people were killed in that camp that I was in because of a raid by the Israeli soldiers looking for, Palestinian, they would call them terrorists, militants, whatever you want to call them, but basically desperate people that live in a camp designed for 3,000. The massive unemployment, they got no jobs, they have no hope. So, seeing that is emotional. But then to go into a comedy tour after, it's just this range of emotions for 5 days that was just incredible.
But when you're traveling in these places and you're going to see the extreme poverties, and you can see it in Thailand as well, does that take a toll? Do you start to, what can I do for them? How can I reach out? And do you take any action, or how do you process that?
I mean, yeah, I'm an emotional person. So yeah, there was a lot of crying. I mean, we went to a comedy show, so there was 5 days of laughter in the evenings, but there was crying during the day. And yeah, you always are looking for what you can do to help. So, my friend with the travel company, Escape Travels, he's built schools in Nepal for impoverished children. The comedy tour and bringing awareness and all of that really is important. I think every individual looks and says, what can I do to help? And the big thing is, I think, individual charity is always, good. But also I think there's pushing people to break preconceived notions and pushing people to talk to their government. Our governments have a lot of power, and you can talk to your representatives and stuff. So if you're passionate about issues in Palestine, or if you're passionate about, say when the tsunami happened, things like that, you can donate, you can raise money, you can volunteer. But also it's really pushing the powerful to help as well.
Well, I mean, people, they are only bound to their limits within, similar to your Dragon Warrior tattoo. Have you always felt this way? Or, I mean, and we're talking about Kung Fu Panda at this point. Have you always felt this way, or has that always lived inside you, and only from that movie it's connected you to attach it to, let's say, that image?
Yeah, I mean, I like cartoon movies, obviously, and I've got the Kung Fu Panda tattoo. I mean, I was bullied, when I was in middle school, and I don't know, I've always been a little bit of a bleeding heart liberal. It's one of those things that I'm losing my train of thought.
Well, I mean, it's like, my understanding is that, like yourself, you're very compassionate and thinking to get out there and be involved, get in the trenches. And my question is more related to that thought process and this, these morals of your life. I've noticed that the tattoo, the Dragon Warrior, and being bound to your own limits. Now, my question is more about that whole philosophy, those morals, those ethics, like within you. Did that come pre or post, getting this tattoo? Has that always been a part of you? Always looking to help, always looking to get involved? What can you do to push humanity forward? How can you help, essentially? Has that always been part of who you are?
Yeah, I think I've got great parents that raised me. They always worked really, really hard, and they're very compassionate people. So, I think that they taught me that empathy, quite young. So yeah, I think it's always been in me, but how that's been reflected, obviously when you're a little middle school, teenage kid and you're getting beat up, you pick on other kids too. So that there's a cycle of violence and stuff. So, getting in little fights and stuff when I was in middle school, and yeah, I have regrets about that kind of stuff. It is what it is, but, as you grow and you kind of get exposed to more people, and I think, obviously going to university and meeting people from different backgrounds and different walks of life, people that have way, way, way more than you, and then people that have way less than you. And I think, the traveling, the more you travel, the more you're exposed to people that are different, the more you understand that everybody's the same. And you can start to put your mind into their shoes and really, feel for them. Yeah. Whereas if you live in your own little bubble your whole life, it's a lot easier to just portray people as other and they're different than you and not really, come to terms and understanding of where they're coming from.
Yeah, and it's very easy to live in those bubbles even abroad. Like living in Canada, it's for 20 years. I moved to Asia when I was 23. But now I'm finding I'm back in a bubble just in Southeast Asia and getting that travel itch and wanting to get out there. This question's more related to the mentality of the expat living in the Middle East. Typically in Thailand, you get all the sour expats. Well, they do this and they do that, and this isn't good and that's not good. But you've really shined light on the Middle East and saying, no, there's more outside the shopping malls and, this plastic side to it, which most people don't think of when they think Dubai and the Middle East. That's not what's going to come to mind. someone like yourself, you got out there, you've become well-traveled in the Middle East to share those stories. But living in the Middle East, what percentage of expats just fall into the Dubai bubble and, even start to talk shit on it eventually, like they're living there? I mean, I'm assuming it's there because it's everywhere as a Farang expat around the whole world.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as, people in the Soy Tayed bubble. There's people that get in their bubble that only ever hang out with other expats that kind of don't embrace, interacting with, local friends and things like that. But, overall, I was in the Middle East from 2010 to 2016. I came out, here, and I was doing a long sabbatical here in 2016, and then I moved to Hong Kong. I did about a year and a half in Hong Kong, and then I moved back to the Middle East because I, enjoyed it so much. And I think, one of the big things for me, that if you just look at it as an expat and you just look at it on the surface level, you miss is Arab hospitality is unrivaled. So, you go into somebody's house and they welcome you with fruit, with tea. You happen to compliment them on their painting on the wall. You're sitting there having a cup of tea, and they'll rip the painting off the wall and try and roll it up and put it and give it to you. They're like, "Here, it's yours," and it's like, "No, I don't need your painting. I was just complimenting you." And they're like, "If you like it, it's yours. Oh, you like my watch? Here, take my watch." It's this. There's funny memes on the internet of like, Arab guys trying to fight over who pays the check, and it's just the most friendly, welcoming place, and it has perceptions from the wars that been fought in the last couple of years, but I think that those perceptions just need to change because it's such a warm and welcoming place, and parts of it are going through some troubles, like Lebanon's going through some issues now. Yep. But again, Beirut, the people, the country, it's just the most beautiful, amazing place. And I have a lot of regrets that I didn't make it to Damascus before the war in Syria started.
You can get there now in Syria, or is it?
I haven't gone.
But it's completely destroyed, right? I mean,
I'm no expert, but I had friends that were studying in university in Damascus before everything went down, and the stories of how wonderful the place was just are pretty amazing.
Well, talking more about the travel bug, I don't know how many countries I've been to, 30, 40, kind of living. I've mostly Asia. I've been everywhere in Asia except for Mongolia, Nepal, and Palau. I guess Polynesia. I've been to North Korea, and
I was meant to do that. Was it Kuro tours or
they have the Kuro tours? Yeah. But I got invited by the government to go play in an international hockey tournament.
Oh, nice.
So my friends from Japan were a hockey team, and they were I was living in China at the time, and they're just like, yeah, we need to get players. Who's coming? Because it's not cheap. I mean, it's probably $2,000 or $3,000 for 5 days or something. And yeah, we took the flight from Beijing. I think it's Kuro. And if you just type in Kuro tours or whatever on YouTube, whatever your video you're watching, like that's what you're going to see. Now, we were a bit more lucky because we had the bus and the red carpet treatment, but it kind of goes off. I know definitely there's parts of North Korea we're not going to see, and it's probably extreme poverty. But at the same time, like Pyongyang, it's a city. It's a running city. So it's not as bad as you think. I mean, it's not a giant show that they kind of put on YouTube or these scam,
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had the chance because I signed up to go right when Trump banned us from going. Okay. So when that election, and he got elected, there was, a kerfuffle. I don't remember what we were doing back and forth. But yeah, we were able to go before that, and then we weren't.
It's just monument after monument.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like, there is something to be said for, politics and all of that. I don't want to get into the politics, but, I can understand why people would have an aversion to spending money there and giving money and the perceptions that you are being shown a really curated tour. But at the end of the day, my curiosity gets the best of me in general.
There's no franchises. I mean, the hotel was so there's 2 towers at the hotel, but there are 2 towers on the top. They have spinning restaurants, but the other tower they had to stop spinning the one and I went like 5, 6, 7 years ago, because one of the spinning towers must spin past a government building, so they just shut the tower down. And this is the only hotel you could stay in. Now I know there's another one they were building. It looks like a triangle or something.
That's been built for 30,
I don't think
30 years.
When I was there, it wasn't. You could see it in the far distance. It could have been a hologram for all I know.
That's an interesting in the architectural world. That's been an interesting project to watch for a very, very.
We were
long
like,
time.
so what about that building? They're like, yeah, it's almost done. It honestly, it looks done, but it's just I think no one's in it.
They have a facade on it now, from what I've seen. But for the longest time, it was just a concrete frame.
And it's like you said, it's a curated tour of what it is. But the hotel, the bread, and they had a beer brewery in it, and the beer was fucking awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to give you the best experience they possibly can, right? So that you go back and tell everybody that it's okay.
Yeah,
so, it is what it is. But, at the end of the day, people are people. And if we look at them as if they're alien, and we'll never understand, where they're coming from. So, even if it is propaganda and even if it is that, I'm still willing to meet people and talk with people and see.
Well, it's tons of propaganda. Like on the flight, even I got lucky to sit beside a flight attendant, and I just started hammering her with questions, and they are brainwashed. They use what was it? The All Master, Mighty Master. This is when Kim Jong-il just died, like a year after. So there's something about the Grandmaster, but they talk like that.
I think Grandmaster's chess, but
I can't remember because this is 7 years ago, and then you read the propaganda books, and like the vocab and the way it's written almost looks like AI's written it. It's just so terrible. It's just a bunch of vocab written over and over again. None of it makes any sense, but there is so much like 1950s propaganda when you drive in with the murals, and it's very interesting though.
I mean, all of us have all of our countries have some nationalist propaganda. We've got, it is, what you're getting when you go to North Korea. I think you know what to expect. I think everybody has a pretty decent understanding of.
And I mean, anyone, you just watch the YouTube video, you can see what it's about. On a lighter note, you've been to 72 countries, and this question's probably impossible for you to ask without some structure. Like, where is your most memorable country you've been to, and explain a little bit why?
I think the tough part about that question is always your memories are shaped by your experience, and your experience is shaped kind of by who you're with and what happens. And, some people could have a very, very different experience of a city or a place than I have, because I might have met, one of my best friends in that trip. So that's always been challenging. But, in terms of some of the most, epic adventures, obviously, the Socotra, Yemen, camping there on that island was absolutely amazing. Going to the Omo Valley and seeing the tribal region of the Omo Valley and being next to a guy from National Geographic filming, this ceremony was crazy. I think they've got the roads. China's been building lots of highways. I think there's roads there now, and it's become a lot more commercialized. But, in terms of, cities, like I lived in New York for a couple of years. It's one of the greatest cities on the planet. It's amazing. But yeah, I think every place is really based on the experience that you had. This recent experience in the West Bank was incredible. As an engineer, going to see Chernobyl before they put the sarcophagus over it, that was pretty eye-opening. It really makes you respect, what you do. And I'm obviously not a nuclear engineer. I'm not nearly smart enough for that. But, as an engineer, you do have people's lives in your hand and making sure buildings don't fall down, things like that. So it's always, heavy. It's very heavy, going to places that have had something disastrous happen.
I think that to figure out, like, thinking back, what was the best country, what was the best location, you're right. It's who you're with, it's the experience. I've been to Vietnam and had a horrible experience. It had nothing to do with the country, and I want to go back. It was just the flight was delayed. Then it was, these funny things where it's like it was out of the control of the experience of the country, and these things can happen. More on your side now. What's driving you to the next country? And to frame that a little bit, for me now, it's the history. Okay, I want to go to the pyramids. Maybe things like Iraq, where they've went in and destroyed these, were they like Babylonian, Mesopotamian like statues. So what's driving me now is I want to get to those places before something happens. And I want, like Easter Island. That's okay. I'd love to go see that. It's something unique. What's driving you? Is it the history or the culture? Culture meaning, and sorry, this is a very long-winded question. Culture meaning like your Ethiopian experiences, maybe going to Tanzania and being with the tribes there as well. This is the cultural experiences. So now when you're starting to think of what's the next country, what factors do you take into consideration? Is it culture? Is it history? Is it buildings? What's driving you?
I'm opportunistic, and it's a combination of all the above, right? So there's a lot of places on my list because of natural wonders and beauty. There's other places because of cultural experiences. There's, interesting festivals and things that I would be interested in going to, but, some of it's just, let's come up with something fun and let's do it. So, with that same friend that I went to Palestine with, we went to Romania before COVID, maybe 2019. So Transylvania, obviously notorious for Dracula. They have Dracula's castle there, one of the castles. I think it's Bram's castle. They have a giant Halloween party. So me and some friends were like, let's go to the Halloween party at Dracula's castle in Transylvania, and, got dressed up as vampires and went, So I think once you break that bug and you get out of your bubble and you start to travel, you realize that it can be done a lot cheaper than you thought, and you realize that it's a lot more accessible than you thought. I mean, obviously that's coming from a place of privilege. I am a white American male with a pretty powerful passport, so I don't need visas and stuff. So I do understand it's harder for other people, and I've been blessed to have a good career. But staying in a hostel in Asia, you can do it for $8 a night, like with free breakfast and maybe a shot at the bar. So
compared maybe going to Switzerland and trying to.
Yeah, I mean, getting your first flight, the money for your first flight is the trouble. Once you do that, we were talking before the show about getting on chicken buses and riding 12 hours on a chicken bus. Yeah. If you're passionate about it and you want to do it, you'll find a way to make it happen. And
what's next for you? Do you have another travel destination that's on that bucket list that you're trying to knock off?
I mean, I think, related to this podcast and I think, Phuket, one of the things that's slowed me down a little bit in terms of, traveling is that I have found, this maybe second or third home. I guess, Dubai would always probably be considered one of my homes. Obviously Philadelphia, New York would be another, but I think Phuket is now my third home. Because this place has something special. We talk about, people wanting to help each other and helping people. I first came out to Phuket in 2015 for a week, but I came on sabbatical and lived here for 4 or 6 months in 2016. I lived here for the entire year, 2018. There's something really special about this island and the vibe of the people that live here, and as well as the expats that are all drawn here, and the whole fitness, martial arts community here is just such a warm and welcoming place that it's not that I've lost the travel bug, but I've slowed down a little bit, and I'm not as seeky as I was before, because I do have a place that I feel really comfortable. And it's one of those places that, people in the Middle East or people back home would ask me, like, why do you like Thailand so much? Are you, I don't know if you could say this on a podcast, are you a sex pest, or, why are you going to Southeast Asia? Like, are you, one of those creepy old men? I mean, I'm getting old, but they kind of have this perception of Phuket being Patong and Bangla Road. And, I've had a couple friends now come and visit and change that perception, down in Rawai and in Chalong, and now even up here in Bang Tao, having a 1.5 kilometer long street with a couple of gyms and martial arts and healthy food and a whole lot of people that are just trying to help each other. I've met a lot of people that are recovering drug addicts, a lot of people like me that have had weight problems their entire life, trying to balance that out. And everybody's really supportive, really friendly, and you've got beautiful weather, beaches, 10-minute scooter ride away.
Well, so. That's the thing. Let's not boost up Phuket. I know you have businesses to run here, so you want traffic. But people ask me, they're like, yeah, well, I'm not coming to, like, friends will be like, yeah, I'm not coming to Phuket. It's Patong. It's like, yeah, it's terrible. Don't come here, and tell everyone else too, please.
Yeah, because the gyms are getting busy, so we need,
I mean, my opinion is, I can see Phuket, the island, is very close to becoming tainted like Bali. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's more of an issue with the traffic, meaning like I'm assuming you've been to Bali.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, but so, like Canggu it's a similar vibe.
Canggu's great, but then it's very difficult to go Canggu, Seminyak, Kuta. I was in Bali 2008 or 9, and you could just go anywhere. I feel Phuket's going to become that, where like you have Bang Tao, and even to get to Kamala is like, you're going to think about it like, shit, do I have 40 minutes? Maybe it's bumper, because Bali's bumper to bumper motorbike traffic. And places like Chalong, when you're there and maybe coming to Bang Tao, if this becomes bumper to bumper motorbike, then when you want to travel the island, you really start to think twice. I hope it doesn't become like that, but with the construction even going up in Laguna, I think it's en route.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, you know, being such a great place that people want to come, you know, also then attracts too many people at a certain point, and finding that right balance is always challenging. But, you know, I still like Bali. I still, you know, I'm a city kid, and I'm used to, you know, New York, Dubai, Hong Kong. You know, I've lived in a lot of very busy, very, very populated places. So this still feels a little laid back to me, even with the traffic. But yeah, I can understand that hesitation to shout at the rooftops, "Hey, come here," when it's already a little bit crowded.
Yeah, it's just going to get bigger and bigger, especially these places like Bang Tao. Bang Tao 7 years ago, there's really nothing here. It's blown up since COVID. Actually, COVID made Bang Tao grow because of the pig beach, we call it. There was just tiki huts there, and now you've got like Maya and beach clubs and beach restaurants. It's all blown up, and I don't think anything like that even exists in all of Thailand. There's no one spot, I think, in all of Thailand like Bang Tao Beach, and hopefully that survives as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been exposed to it, you know, since the boys moved up from Tiger, and you know, it's epic. Obviously, I've got the businesses down in the south, so I stay down in the south. But yeah, I'd love to come up here more often. Before COVID, I didn't really know much about anything north of like Cafe Del Mar. That was about as far as
it's far. You need your passport sometimes to come up here, right? I mean, how long did it take you today? 40 minutes?
50 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, it's just certain times it changes. Like I was there on the weekend at Phuket Fight Club for the CrossFit thing. Yeah, it took about 50 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, in a car it's brutal. Scooters you can still.
Were you on the motorbike?
Oh yeah, zip in and out. Like,
and
I'm not patient enough to drive a car in this place.
Yeah.
I'd rather get soaking wet and weave in and out of traffic than just be stuck. You know.
Yeah, it's even like we'll take the car going to the like Boat Avenue area, and even right now it's bumper to bumper for like 40 minutes just because of the traffic lights and it gets all backed up. Let's jump into your business and what you're doing here. I mean, you've started up your restaurants. You got 2 restaurants going now, and just to kind of backtrack to what you're saying your parents were doing, they're also involved in the catering business. Have you always had a passion to get into the restaurant business? Is this your first venture into that?
I've always had a passion for food, I think. Love-hate relationship, I think. Yeah, I mean, I grew up, you know, when I was like 12 or 13, I started working. And yeah, my dad, when I was growing up, he worked at a Mexican restaurant called Casa Maria. And my uncle had restaurants and catering. So we'd always work for my uncle's companies. So yeah, I worked in hotels and restaurants until when I was 16, I got a driver's license and started working in an architecture firm, but I still did part-time work in that. Listen, restaurants weren't always necessarily the dream, and I think that they're only one part of the dream, and there's other things that I want to do. But I wanted to have an anchor here, and I wanted to have an excuse to be here and really set this up as one of my bases. And I also love Mexican food, and I love Mediterranean food and Turkish food.
Or you're just sick of it, like, okay, you know what? There's no quality.
Well, I'm not gonna throw shade, but I just wanted to have good food nearby and have a place that was fun. You know, it doesn't take itself too seriously. So, you know, we've got we're on Fight Street, so we've got the luchador, masked Mexican wrestler like Nacho Libre theme to it. So I like to have an excuse to wear ridiculous shirts, and you know, it's fun, and you know, I like good food. So, you know, getting a proper chef, you know, Mexican chef to come down. We brought him down from Bangkok. Our Turkish restaurant, we've got a real Turkish chef I want to eat good food, and I want everybody else to eat good food too.
How did the concept for the Lucha Libre, how did this come together? I mean, you can go many different directions with a Mexican restaurant. Why this?
I mean, we're on a street full of some of the scariest wrestlers in the world. I wanted to, I think a lot of my friends that fight MMA, a lot of the UFC and ONE FC guys that you hang out with, they all grew up with WWE and wrestling. So I thought, what better, theme to have on a street full of scary fighters than, mass Mexican wrestling. And, I think having that like cheeky, branding, we can play with it a little bit. So we're just doing this hot wings challenge now, where we've got like hot sauce that I brought over from the States, has like Carolina Reapers, like the hottest chili peppers you can get. So we're doing a hot wing challenge, and we're doing the heel, like the typical wrestler heel, calling you out. You can't do this. You're gonna fail. You think you're tough. You're a big bodybuilder. Look at you with your steroids, but you can't even handle these 6 little chicken wings. You can have fun with it.
Yeah, that stuff. I tried your Poirier, but the hotter one, and just a little dab. Fuck me, man. It's strong.
Oh, dude, the Poirier is nothing, bro. That's not even...
You had 2 of them. One of them was okay. The other one like kicked my ass. I'm not a super spicy guy.
Oh yeah. You should come try it then. It's entertaining for me. Yeah, we enjoy watching people cry.
Did you watch the show Hot Ones?
Oh, it's an amazing show.
Great.
He does such a good job at it.
Okay, so I have no one steal this idea. I told Joey this is my idea. I don't know what to call it. I was thinking tuck tales, but that's not going to be the show. It's just the idea. My idea is like it's a mix of comedian in cars getting coffee and Hot Ones. So what I do is similar to a podcast, but there'll be 20 or 30-minute episodes. I pick you up in a tuk-tuk, but we're going to like a Somtam restaurant or a super spicy restaurant. And we have the Hot Ones interview. So the interview starts in the tuk-tuk, us going there, which adds another dynamic because people get to see Thailand. There's always something crazy going on the road, like people with 10 kids on. There's going to be cool stuff to see on the drive. And then once you get there, then you start the interview. And the one idea, but we could do it with other spicy food, is you start with just a somtam and you start with 1 chili. And then we just follow the Hot Ones recipe. You add 2, 3 until the problem is that guy can hold his spice and do the conversation. I won't be. I'll be the one fucked up.
I think that's still entertaining for everyone, though, seeing you cry on your own podcast.
I thought it's what do you think of that? It's not a bad idea.
I'll sign up for that. Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Would you do it?
100%, man.
See, maybe, and the idea is we come and film it at different restaurants all around Thailand. Now, obviously, I'm not going to take a tuk-tuk to the soy, but maybe I drive my car and then I take it from around someone there. I pick them up in the tuk-tuk. We come to the restaurant. We do the interview. And again, this is like, it's just a YouTube video that's going to be less than 25, like Hot Ones, about that length. And we just do the interviews, eating this spicy stuff and try to get through it. I think it adds that whole other dynamic.
I think you also, when you introduce the spicy food or you introduce the aspect of being in a tuk-tuk with wild things happening around you, people let their guard down a little bit more. And, the spice distracts you from your own. You get out of your own head, I think. So,
you can't be politically correct. It slips away.
Your brain is too focused on holding it together and not crying and not having snot drip out your nose. So you lose the filter a little bit, maybe.
I'll let you know. Maybe you can be our first guest on that episode. I'm dead serious, like ready to start filming. I got to talk to these guys. I'm not an over planner for content. Some people over plan. I believe in just do it and get better.
I'm very comfortable crying on camera, and you can see stuff.
See, I'm going to be the one messed up. We might do maybe we'll do the first one at your restaurant there.
Oh, if you want to do the Hot Wings challenge, you're more than welcome. I would love to see that.
Well, that's the thing. Like the spicy food doesn't need to be Thai. It just needs to be Thailand.
I want to see you suffer, mate. That's.
I know. After this podcast, you want to kick my ass now. Okay, we usually try to keep this under an hour. Especially with I used to do like 2.5 hours. And this was pre Instagram Reels and TikTok. But over the past 2 years, because Reels aren't that old, everyone's attention spans dropped down. So I feel like we're watching the YouTube algorithm, like we have to reduce the podcast shorter and shorter. They usually go no more than an hour. Mentally, I try to aim for 30 minutes, but it's very hard on a podcast for 30 minutes because it's so raw. With this episode, there's a lot of editing that can be done to clean it up. just on like a final note, and I'll let you go off on this point. For speaking about your job in particular, as you're getting into like project management and traveling the world, there's some flexibility there, and you're definitely privileged in that sense because, as most people might understand, project management works in waves. So as you finish a project, you're able to travel. Is that how you're able to travel the world so frequently? You're doing your projects, they last 3 months, and you can take that time off before another one begins?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit different than like software project management and things like that. You know, in theory, I do need to be on site a lot. So whether it's design or construction, most of the time the clients want you to be in the field. So, you know, the last 3.5 years, I lived in a construction camp in the northwest of Saudi Arabia, you know, bunch of trailers, barbed wire fence. So it's not quite the same as the guys in Western Australia doing the fly in, fly out, 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off. For me, it's, I try and, you know, one of the benefits of getting out of the States and Canada is the vacation time. So, you know, I was blessed to get 25, 30 days of vacation. So I tried to make the most of that. And I took breaks between projects when I could. So yeah, there was a couple of times, you know, when I did the 2016 sabbatical, the 2018 took a year off. You know, it's really, you know, finish a project and, you know, take some time, you know, live off the credit cards or the savings for a little while and, you know, YOLO, go for it and see what happens, you know, then go back to work and pay off the debt that you run up from not working for a couple of years.
I just was assuming that with because we do with LED display, we're doing projects as well. And it's very hills and valleys. Yeah. Everything's hills and valleys. And we take advantage of those valleys. Even with my boss, we'll be like, okay, let's take a break. Like, yeah, we can do some small stuff, but mentally, you know, you need a month. Do you need that as well? Like that vacation, you must be working your ass off on those projects, maybe 15, 60-hour days. When you finally get into that valley, like, what's that feeling like? Is it just like a weight off your shoulder?
I've never done a 50-hour day, but I've definitely done a 23-hour.
15, sorry. I said 15.
No, I mean, honestly, you know, I've always struggled, you know, with my weight, and it's very much anxiety, stress related, and, you know, happiness, depression. And one of the things that, you know, when I'm working, I work incredibly hard, and I'll do 80, 90-hour weeks easy. When you have deadlines, you know, with architecture and engineering, you have, you know, delivery. This is when we're issuing construction drawings. They're going out to market, to contractors, to tender. So it has to be done this day. And you're trying to coordinate people from LA to Hong Kong, you know, to put together this package with 100 different people doing their part. So yeah, when I hit deadlines, there'll be 2-3 all-nighters in a row sometimes, and you're completely and utterly burnt out. And yeah, you do have to take breaks because otherwise you won't make it. But yeah, you know, my mental health, everything kind of yo-yos back and forth with that cycle of delivery. And, you know, you can see it in my weight, you can see it in my sleeping patterns. You can really see when there's deadlines.
Almost similar to like a position of a nurse as well. They're working crazy 12-hour shifts, 18-hour shifts, and they get a couple weeks off and they come back. But yeah, my sister's a nurse, and she's telling me, and she's put on weight as well, that it's because your sleep gets so fucked up. Your whole system is just way out of whack.
Well, I think you get the fight or flight response, you know, from stress and anxiety. That was it, cortisol, I think, is
the cortisol.
Yeah, so you're constantly hitting yourself with hits of cortisol when you're putting yourself in those environments for that long. And you know, and that's one of the big things. I don't want to get back onto the Phuket thing, but the big thing that I noticed here, and that I can say, this isn't Bangla Road and isn't Patong, is, you know, I'm here in nature. You're outside training, you're outside eating, you live a lot more like natural than just in your air-conditioned box. And that leads to sleeping better, and that leads to decreasing your cortisol. So, you know, the best remedy I've found, and that's why I keep coming back to this place, is travel, but also specifically travel to here and getting myself more in touch with nature, getting myself, you know, more in touch with sleeping a solid 6 to 8 hours as opposed to 4, you know.
But it's also the convenience, and I find your life in Phuket specifically, I wouldn't say Bangkok, but Phuket, your life becomes extremely optimized in the sense of every hour, everything you're doing something, there's value. If you're in the US and you're driving to work 2 hours a day, that's not optimized. Phuket, there's no matter who you are working here, if you're working in a hotel, it's very rare that you have these commutes on the island. Maybe if you're an English teacher, but if you choose to live away from your school, that's up to you. You can live by the school. Phuket is very convenient. I mean, you can go out, hop on your motorbike and drive 400 meters to the 7-Eleven, get whatever the hell you need and come back home. You can't do that in the U.S. I come from small town Canada. You can't do that in Canada. There ain't no motorbike. You heat up the car, get in the car, drive maybe 10 minutes to the convenience store. Like, things take much more time. It's much slower. Here it's very optimized, quick and fast. And with that, it allows you to put more focus on the things you want to do. Exercise, maybe, go walk on the beach, do yoga, even just relax. Back home or in these cities, I find you start to lose a lot. Time slips away on things that are not so necessary. I don't know if that you relate to that.
Yeah, I completely relate to that. And you're also under the weight of so much stress and anxiety that even when you do have a bit of time and you have, you finish work at 8:00 at night, you've been working 8 to 8, you finish, you have an hour, you could potentially go to the gym or something, but you're just so wrecked and so exhausted. You only slept 4 hours the night before because your brain was racking on all the stuff you needed to do in the next day. So, that just piles onto itself. And, that was why, I was always looking for having a holiday booked every 3 or 4 months just to make sure that I could have something to look forward to get through that. And, that's not a healthy coping mechanism at all.
Is this lifestyle, this system, is this still something you're living? Now, I understand, okay, you're here and you've opened up your restaurants, but do you need to go back to that engineering work? Or is this are you trying to step away from that?
Yeah, so I'm trying to do online.
Unless your boss is watching.
I'm trying to do some online consulting work. So, yeah, the company that I was working for the last 3.5 years, I think I'm going to do some consulting work for them online, maybe 2 days a week, starting in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully I can do that. But yeah, we'll see. I do want to. I've been passionate about cities and buildings and designing better cities since I was 12 years old. So I don't want to walk away from that. But I do want to. I want to get more into helping people a little bit. So my first step was getting in the door, was just getting restaurants, and obviously I'm just helping people have a drink or have some tacos. That's not really what I'm here for. But I do have bigger plans to try and put some stuff together that I think would synergize well with this atmosphere here.
With Phuket in terms of development
and then
infrastructure.
Well, businesses and potentially a little bit of infrastructure that would help complement kind of the vibes that I already feel here, that you feel when you go to Canggu. And I'd like to be able to spread that into other places as well. I think back home, there is a need for more kind of places like this back home.
Bringing them back to the U.S.
Yeah, back to the U.S.
I wonder if it would work there. Like, it's just so expensive in these.
Yeah, I think there's some spots where we could potentially put something together. So, yeah, that's the long-term goal is really, at a certain point, I love what I've done for the last 15, 20 years. I love putting together, crazy high-rise buildings and crazy museums and stuff. But every once in a while, I'll end up doing, condos or fancy buildings for rich people and stuff. And, it's not as rewarding as the museums are really cool, but, you feel like you do want to have some purpose in your life and feel like you're doing something to make things better. So yeah, that's the goal is trying to pivot into that.
And being able to use your that creative bone as well, instead of just, I'm assuming maybe these richer condos, these high rises, like, is there a lot of room for, not like a museum where you can get extremely creative on the design side?
I mean, I've worked on some crazy. The creativity has always been, the projects that I've got to work on. I've been absolutely blessed to work with some of the best architects in the world, and do really, really crazy projects.
Well, now, are we allowed to talk about you're doing some work in Saudi? But I'm assuming maybe you're under an NDA.
Yeah, I'm under an NDA, but yeah, I can say the last couple of years I worked on Niam, which is a whole new city that they're building in the northwest.
It's supposed to be 100-kilometer.
They want to do 170-kilometer long.
Is this possible?
I'm not gonna.
Okay.
Anything's possible from an engineering perspective, and if anybody can do ambitious stuff, the Saudis are very much willing and able to do very ambitious projects.
So this is gonna I think I read, or I'm assuming it's got to be $4 trillion plus to get that thing.
Yeah, I can't comment on any of that, but from an engineering and architecture perspective, it is an absolute playground. So, the last 4 years I've gotten to not only work with the best architects in the world, but make friends with the best architects in the world. Brand names from every continent.
Are you allowed to share, like, where are they at in the project? Like, the ground's broken?
Yeah, I mean, there's publicly available. So if you go and look on the website and stuff, you can see that they've already broken ground and they're digging holes and they're, putting in,
do they have a projected completion date?
So there's obviously no city's ever done, right? So every city is always constantly evolving, but there's a big push for 2030 to have, a decent sized population there by 2030.
Interesting.
And there's projects that are rolling out, as we speak,
Why are they doing that? Is that to help like battle with the heat in Saudi Arabia? Because it's so like traveling outside, like Dubai, people are just going aircon to aircon. Singapore is always aircon to aircon. What was the whole purpose behind this project?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't speak on behalf of the government, and the chairman of our board was His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. From a strategic perspective, I think that the location is some of the most beautiful places I've ever been. So if you're familiar with the States and you go the southwest of the United States where Monument Valley is, where they film a lot of the Westerns, you see like Clint Eastwood back in the day filming Westerns there. The inland part of Neom is like that. It's beautiful, pink granite cliffs, beautiful mountains, beautiful plateaus. And then the mountains go right up to the coastline and you have the most beautiful sea with incredible coral. It's strategically located right near the main shipping corridors that go through the Suez. So from a strategic perspective, it's a great place. The climate, everybody, talks about the climate being so utterly hot. Where I'm from, there's 3 months a year where it's so cold, 4 months a year where it's so cold that I don't want to be outside. You're from Canada. I don't like the cold. The heat's the same thing. 8-9 months a year, it's absolutely gorgeous. The best weather you can ever imagine. Probably 250 days of beautiful sunrises and sunsets. It's right across from Sharm el Sheikh, so it's a great place for a city. I think Saudi Arabia has a population, I think something like 40-50 million people.
So not that big.
It's pretty big.
Well, Canada's like 35 and
yeah, it's much smaller than Canada, but I think something like 50 or 60% of that population is under the age of like 35 or 40. So it's a very young, very, very well-educated population. So they're looking at, taking some of the thunder away from Dubai and getting some of these global corporations to come and work in Saudi. And the kingdom has, this wealth of very highly educated talent. And it makes sense from a strategic perspective to grow the kingdom.
They still got their oil, and I think Dubai is almost run dry. I think now it's all they're relying on Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi's, Dubai hasn't had oil for a while, but Abu Dhabi's had it.
All right, just that was more of a personal to understand what's going on. I see so much going on. I work with Dubai on some LED display stuff, we're actually planning to go out to Saudi Arabia. I think there's a lot of work to be done there. We're getting hit up on different tenders for that stuff. On a final note, as a you're very well traveled in that sense, 72 countries. As we travel to these countries, we're always picking up tidbits or magic plans to help you travel. For me, one example is I think the past 4 or 5 years, I've really adapted into the fanny pack for traveling. The reason for that, and everyone I've told after, I would say the past 5 years, access to your passport and just everything there. Boom, 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 let's go, instead of the backpack, unzip. Do you have any travel tips? Like, what are some of your go-tos, whether it's packing or just,
I mean, my first travel tip would be calling it a bum bag instead of a fanny pack for our British friends.
Okay.
They'll think that one's pretty funny. So that'll be the first one. I think the biggest tip is just do it, man. So many people get in their own heads about traveling, and I have so many friends from home. They're like, "Oh, I wish we could do whatever," and at the end of the day, flights are expensive, but once you get past that first flight, you can wander and you can get by, for the cheap, and it's such an experience, and it's so worthwhile that you gotta work, you gotta eat, you gotta do these things, but just get out there and go do something and be curious. I think don't go to a place and just
get drunk on the Bangla Road.
Yeah, don't just go to Phuket and go to Bangla Road. Go and explore a little bit. Interact with people. Have an experience. I think is the biggest thing. There's practical tips. I mean, you can go on the internet for practical tips. I think it's just just go out and do it.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think some of the best travel experiences I've had were unplanned and just go. Living in Phuket, some of the best trips I've ever done is just waking up on a Saturday morning and be like, screw it, I'm driving to Krabi.
Yeah, just a road trip to Krabi with a couple of friends can be the best experience ever.
Just go. Yeah. And those are the more memorable times when I find when you really overplan and think about it too much. By the time you get there, you've already painted that whole experience picture in your mind that it doesn't maybe live up to it or it's not the same. When you have no expectations and you just go and do it and you get there, your brain doesn't have time to process about what's going to happen. It just happens, and that's my outlook.
Yeah, and say yes, I think, as well. And if you're traveling solo, people there's negative perceptions of hostels and stuff. Mate, if you're traveling solo, those are even if you don't want to share a room with 12 people, get a solo room in a hostel, because they're the places where you have lots of other people that you can interact with, or an Airbnb where you share with the host. When you're traveling alone, sometimes you get lonely. The best place to meet new friends and have crazy adventures is at a hostel at 3 a.m, and people decide, at 7 a.m. we're gonna go and get this chicken bus and go somewhere crazy. Yeah, just say yes. I think
there's thing. I used to do that. I've done that a few times. I can't sleep in a room with other people. I don't know. That's just me. So I would get the solo room sometimes. Yeah. But at a certain point now, I've been in Asia since I'm 38. Well, almost 38 in December, since 23. But I feel like those experiences now, when I get there, I'm looking at them like they're children.
They are.
Right?
Yeah. No, you do feel old when you're our age there. I guess I'm talking to people a little bit younger.
Yeah.
But even then, I've been in a hostel where there's been a 65-year-old lady just become widowed, and she's out and she goes out for drinks and then comes with us and we go on a little adventure and go sightseeing.
Interesting.
I think every experience is what you make of it. And if you get in your own head and you're self-conscious about it, it'll be awkward. Mm-hmm. But, and at a certain day, I'm too old to go out and go on a pub crawl with a bunch of 21-year-olds and do that kind of stuff. So I'm not really advocating for that unless that's what you're up for. But just the social aspect of meeting new people and sharing experiences and being inspired, I think is the thing for me,
Yeah, and the people in the hostels, not everyone's going on the pub crawl ever.
Yeah.
Find the ones that are hungover because they probably plan the next day not to go out.
Yeah.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to kick it back to this camera. Oh, we definitely went over an hour, sorry. I'll kick it back to that camera. If you can stare into the depth of your fans' souls and just let everybody know where they can find you, some of your businesses going on in Phuket, and if they want to reach out to you on your socials as well. We'll put all that information and descriptions in the link.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for having me. Really appreciate it. You can catch us at Lucha Cantina and the Flying Armbar, both of them on Soi Thai, the same street as Tiger Muay Thai. And our socials are at Lucha Phuket and at Armbar Phuket. And my personal is at Gilby Goes. So
awesome. Yeah, I highly recommend check out his personal channel. There's a lot of cool, interesting images, pictures from the places that you've been. But most of what I've seen, and we didn't even talk about diving. I'm a diver as well. It's a lot of places that are not on the beaten or are off the beaten path. So that's why I got quite interested. I'm like, okay, it's not a typical Instagram of, Rome and this and, Bangkok, where it's, stuff I've seen. It's very interesting. So go check it out. And you can obviously check the locations as well. And I don't know if you want them sending you DMs. Probably not. We'll block that. That wraps up another episode of the podcast. And I never know how to end these things. So we're out.